Most people walk around believing they are the ones in charge of their own thoughts, that the voice in their head, the one commenting, judging, worrying, narrating every moment of their day, is them, that whatever it says must be considered, must be responded to, must be obeyed, at least most of the time. It isn't them. And the fact that almost no one questions this is the single largest blind spot most people will carry for their entire lives. Here's the strange part. If a person walked up to you constantly, all day, every day, and narrated your inadequacies, predicted your failures, replayed your embarrassments, and told you what to be afraid of, you would recognize that as abuse. You would create distance from that person immediately. But when the exact same voice comes from inside your own skull, it gets a different status entirely. It gets treated as truth, as identity, as you. That's the mechanism. And it's worth slowing down on because almost everything downstream depends on it.
The mind generates thoughts constantly. Most of them are not requested. They are not chosen. They simply arise based on conditioning, fear circuitry, old patterns, half-finished worries from years ago that never got resolved and are still running in the background. The mind produces this material the way the heart produces a heartbeat, automatically, without your permission. The problem isn't that this happens. The problem is that most people don't experience these thoughts as things the mind is producing. They experience them as things they are thinking. The subject and the object collapse into one. And once that collapse happens, every thought arrives with an implicit demand. Believe me, act on me. I am you.
A 2010 study from Harvard, published in Science, used experience sampling to track what people were actually thinking about throughout their days. The finding was remarkable. Nearly half of waking thought was unrelated to the present moment, and critically, the researchers found that mind wandering, especially toward negative or anxious content, was a strong predictor of decreased well-being, regardless of what people were actually doing. The activity didn't determine how people felt. The thoughts about the activity did. And those thoughts, in the vast majority of cases, were not chosen. They were simply running.
This is the part most people never examine. If the thoughts aren't chosen, if they arise on their own, driven by old conditioning and unresolved fear, then on what basis are they being treated as authoritative? Why does a thought that says, "you're going to fail," carry more weight than a thought that says, "you're going to be fine"? Both arose the same way. Neither was reasoned through. Neither was chosen. But one of them gets believed instantly, and the other gets dismissed as naive. The answer is that the threat detection system in the brain weights negative possibilities more heavily than positive ones, a survival mechanism that made sense when threats were physical and immediate, and makes considerably less sense when the threat is a slightly awkward email you sent 4 hours ago. The mind isn't lying to you because it's malicious. It's lying to you because it's running ancient software on a modern problem set, and you've been treating the output as gospel.
The Stoics had a name for the part of you that can observe this process. They called it the rational faculty, the part of you capable of examining a thought rather than simply having it. Epictetus put it directly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. What most people miss is that this applies just as much to your own thoughts as it does to external events. A thought arising is an event. How you relate to it, believe it, dismiss it, examine it, is the reaction. And that reaction is the part that's actually yours. Most advice here goes wrong in a specific way. Think positive. Stop overthinking. These treat the problem as a content issue, as if the solution is simply replacing bad thoughts with good ones. But that's still operating from inside the same collapse. You're still treating thoughts as things you are, just trying to make the thoughts nicer. The actual shift is structural. It's not about changing what the mind says. It's about changing your relationship to the fact that it's saying anything at all.
The first is the observer gap. The next time a strong thought arises, a worry, a judgment, a prediction, pause and notice that you are aware of the thought. That awareness is not the thought. It's the thing that's noticing the thought. This sounds abstract until you actually do it, and then it becomes very concrete very quickly. There is a you, and there is the thought, and they are not the same thing. Just locating that gap, even briefly, changes the entire relationship. The second is evidence checking, applied specifically to the mind's negative predictions.
The anxious voice makes confident claims about the future constantly, and it is wrong an enormous percentage of the time. Most people never check this, because by the time the prediction would have been tested, they've moved on to the next one. Start keeping score. Write down what the anxious thought predicted. Then check, later, what actually happened. Over time, the pattern becomes undeniable, and a voice that is wrong most of the time loses its automatic authority. The third is response delay. A thought arrives, demanding immediate belief and immediate action. Most people comply instantly. Response delay is simply inserting space, even a few seconds, between the thought arriving and any decision being made based on it. In that space, the thought often reveals itself. It loses urgency. It starts to look like what it actually is, one possibility among many, generated by a system that doesn't have your full context and isn't optimizing for your actual well-being. Here's the practical version. For one day, every time you notice a strong negative or self-critical thought, do one thing. Silently label it. Just say, internally, thought. Not true, not false, just thought. That's it. This sounds almost too small to matter, but what it does is interrupt the automatic collapse between you and the thought, even for a second. And that second is where everything changes. Because in that second, you're no longer inside the thought. You're looking at it. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one who can hear it. That distinction is the entire difference between being controlled and being free. If this one resonated, subscribe, because the people who understand these patterns always stay one step ahead.